Your child is terrified of the drain in the bathtub. Not the water. Not the soap. The drain. You have explained, calmly and repeatedly, that nothing bad lies down there. You have demonstrated. You have reasoned. And none of it matters. The second the water starts to swirl, your child screams like the floor just opened up. And you are standing there, a fully grown adult, completely baffled by a 4-inch hole in the porcelain. But here is the thing. Your child is not being irrational. Your child is being exactly what evolution designed them to be. And once you understand what is actually happening inside that small, panicking brain, you will never look at their fears the same way again. Fear is one of the oldest systems in the human brain. It is not a flaw. It is not a sign that something went wrong. It is a survival engine that has been running, uninterrupted, for hundreds of millions of years. And in children, that engine runs hotter, faster, and with far less filtering than it does in adults. Neuroscientist Joseph LeDoux spent decades mapping how fear works in the brain. What he found was that fear does not travel through logic first. It travels through a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala, which sits deep in the brain and operates entirely on pattern recognition. It does not ask questions. It does not weigh evidence. It sees a shape, a sound, a movement, and it fires. Immediately. Automatically. Before your child has even formed a conscious thought. In adults, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reason and judgment, can step in and regulate that fear signal. It can say, that is just a drain. Nothing dangerous lies there. You are safe. But here is the problem. Your child does not have a fully developed prefrontal cortex yet. That part of the brain does not finish developing until the mid-20s. Which means your 4-year-old is running a full-powered fear system with almost no regulatory brakes. The alarm goes off, and there is nothing to turn it down. So the fear is real. The terror is real. The brain is doing exactly what it was built to do. It just cannot stop itself. But that still does not explain why the drain. Why not something actually dangerous, like a hot stove or a sharp edge? Why do children so often end up terrified of things that make no logical sense? Psychologist Judith Rappaport, who spent years researching childhood fears at the National Institute of Mental Health, described children as natural threat detectors operating on evolutionary software that is millions of years old. That software was not designed for your bathroom. It was designed for the savannah, for the forest, for a world where dark holes in the ground meant snakes. Where small enclosed spaces meant predators. Where loud unexpected sounds meant danger from above. Your child's brain is not seeing a drain. It is seeing a dark opening that things could come out of. And in the ancestral environment your child's brain was built for, that pattern was worth being afraid of. This is why children's fears follow such a predictable set of categories across cultures and across history. Darkness. Strangers. Loud sudden sounds. Animals. Being separated from a parent. Heights. Things that move unexpectedly. These are not random. They map almost perfectly onto the actual threats that faced small humans in the wild. A child who was afraid of the dark stayed close to the fire. A child who screamed when a stranger approached gave their parent time to react. A child who clung to their caregiver at heights did not fall off a cliff. Fear, in this sense, is not a malfunction. It is a feature. A very old, very effective feature that saved millions of lives long before there were bathtubs or vacuum cleaners or thunderstorms behind glass windows. But then why does your child seem to be afraid of things that are not on that ancient list? Why is your child afraid of a costume head at a theme park? Why does the sound of a flushing toilet in a public restroom send them into a panic? Why do some children develop an intense dread of buttons, or balloons, or the sound of crinkled plastic? This is where the science gets genuinely fascinating. Developmental psychologist Alison Gopnik at the University of California, Berkeley has described the young child's brain as operating like a lantern rather than a flashlight. An adult brain focuses attention narrowly, filtering out what is irrelevant and homing in on what matters. A child's brain illuminates everything at once. Every sensation. Every sound. Every visual detail in the room. This means children are not just more easily startled. They are taking in more raw information than you are, all the time, with less ability to filter what is threatening from what is not. The costume character at the theme park has a head that is proportioned wrong. The eyes do not move the way eyes should move. The mouth is fixed in a smile that does not change. To you, none of this registers as threatening because your brain instantly categorizes it as a costume. To your child's brain, something with a human shape but wrong eyes and a frozen mouth triggers every alarm in the threat detection system simultaneously. Researchers call this the uncanny valley effect, and while it is commonly discussed in the context of robots and CGI, it applies in full force to very young children encountering anything that looks almost human but not quite right. The brain pattern matches to a human, finds too many features that do not fit, and fires a fear response before any conscious assessment is possible. And the fears that seem most random, the buttons, the balloons, the crinkled bags, these are often the result of a single sharp experience that the brain encoded as dangerous. This is called one-trial learning, and it is another ancient feature of the fear system. In the wild, you did not need to touch a venomous spider twice to learn that touching venomous spiders was a bad idea. One encounter, one intense fear response, and the brain locked that pattern in permanently. For a small child, a balloon that popped unexpectedly at a birthday party when they were 2 years old can leave an encoded fear that surfaces every time they see another balloon. The brain does not remember the logic of what happened. It remembers the physical sensation of the startle, the sudden loud noise, the spike of adrenaline, and it links all of that to the round colorful object. Now every round colorful object carries that emotional charge. You cannot talk a child out of this. Not because the child is stubborn, but because the fear is stored in a part of the brain that language cannot reach. This is one of the most important things to understand about childhood fear. The part of the brain generating the fear and the part of the brain processing your reassuring words are not in good communication with each other. When you kneel down and say, softly and patiently, that balloons cannot hurt you, you are talking to the prefrontal cortex. But the fear is coming from the amygdala. And right now, those two structures are not talking to each other effectively because the neural connections between them are still being built. Your words are landing in the wrong room. What does work, what the research consistently supports, is something much slower and less satisfying than a good explanation. It is called graduated exposure, and it is built on the same principle your child's brain actually operates on: repeated, safe encounters that slowly teach the threat detection system that this particular thing does not require an alarm. You do not force the child near the balloon. You put a balloon in the corner of the room, far away, and you let them decide how close to get. Over days or weeks, the proximity slowly closes. The amygdala logs each safe encounter and quietly adjusts its response. The fear does not vanish overnight. It recalibrates. This is also why the absolute worst thing you can do when a child is in the grip of a fear response is to become frustrated or dismissive. Telling a child their fear is silly does not calm the amygdala. What it does is add a second layer. Now the child is afraid of the thing, and they are also experiencing the shame of being told that their fear is wrong. The brain encodes both. The fear becomes more complicated, not less. What helps, according to decades of developmental research, is what is called co-regulation. Your calm presence, your slow voice, your steady body language, these physically transmit a safety signal that the child's nervous system can detect and begin to mirror. The child's brain does not learn calm from being told to be calm. It learns calm by being near someone who is calm, over and over, until the nervous system starts to replicate that state on its own. You are not just comforting your child. You are lending them a prefrontal cortex they have not grown yet. And the fears will change. Between the ages of 2 and 5, fears tend to center on the immediate and imaginary: monsters, the dark, things hiding under beds, drains. Between 6 and 12, fears begin to shift toward the social and the real: failure, embarrassment, illness, something bad happening to a parent. Each phase reflects the brain's current developmental preoccupations, And each phase passes as the brain matures and accumulates more experience that updates its threat models. The drain that was terrifying at 4 will be nothing at 7. Not because you finally explained it well enough, but because your child's brain will have logged hundreds of baths, hundreds of drains, all of them survivable, and the amygdala will have quietly revised its threat assessment without any announcement. So the next time your child freezes at the entrance to a public bathroom because the hand dryer might go off, or refuses to walk past the neighbor's wind chimes, or will not sleep because something about the shadow in the corner looks wrong, try to remember what is actually happening. An ancient fear system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. A brain is working with the hardware it has. And a child is living in a world that evolution could never have prepared them for, with a threat detector calibrated for a world that no longer exists. Your patience is not just kindness. It is neuroscience. Your calm is not just comfort. It is the most effective tool available for helping a developing brain slowly learn the difference between danger and a drain. And one day, long after they have forgotten the fear entirely, they will stand in their own bathroom with their own child and wonder why on earth the kid is terrified of the drain.